My name is Judith Lane, 32, and I've spent months pouring my heart into planning my sister's wedding in Knoxville, Tennessee. Picture this: I'm lugging boxes of decorations, sweating over table settings, and coordinating a buffet for 150 guests, my gift to her big day. But 1 week before the wedding, I overheard a conversation that flipped everything upside down. My parents and sister, huddled in our living room, thought I was out of earshot. They were plotting to stick me with babysitting 12 kids during the ceremony and reception without even asking me. Me, the unpaid event planner, now demoted to glorified nanny, I felt my blood boil. They assumed I'd just roll over like always. But not this time. I made a choice right then. I canceled the catering contract with one phone call, scrapped the decorations I'd spent weeks designing, and booked a weekend at a boutique hotel downtown. On the wedding day, my phone lit up with frantic calls. My sister's voice screamed through the line, "Where are you?" I leaned back in my hotel suite, sipped my coffee, and laughed. "Don't wait for me," I said, "and don't wait for the buffet." What happened next? Let's just say their perfect day turned into a lesson they'll never forget. Stick around to see how it all unfolded. Before we dive into my story, tell me what time it is where you are and which city you're watching from. I'd love to know how far my story has traveled. For months, I poured my heart into planning Stacy's wedding, my sister's big day. At 32, I had built a name for myself as an event designer in Knoxville, Tennessee, and this was my gift to her. Her big day was set for a public park with sprawling oaks and a gazebo perfect for vows. I spent weeks sketching table layouts, sourcing linens, and tasting menu options with caterers. My evenings were a blur of phone calls confirming floral arrangements, double-checking the buffet for 150 guests, tweaking the playlist to match Stacy's vibe. I even hand-picked fairy lights to drape over the reception area, imagining her smile when she saw it. This wasn't just work. It was love, my way of showing up for family. Tuesday evening, I got home late, arms full of fabric swatches. The house was quiet, but voices drifted from the living room. I paused by the staircase, not meaning to eavesdrop, but my dad. George's tone stopped me cold. "Judith will handle the kids," he said, like it was a done deal. My mom, Elizabeth, chimed in. "She's good with them, and it'll save us hiring a sitter." Then Stacy, my sis, laughed. "Yeah, she's always up for anything. 12 kids won't be a problem." 12 kids? My stomach twisted. They were talking about me babysitting a dozen children during the wedding ceremony reception, the whole deal, without even asking. I leaned closer, gripping the banister. Elizabeth added, "She's already doing the decorations and food. What's a few more hours?" George grunted. "It's not like she's got her own life to worry about." I felt like I'd been slapped. My parents and sisters saw me as their free labor, someone to dump tasks on because I was reliable. All those late nights, all that effort, and they thought I was just their errand girl. I slipped upstairs, my chest tight with hurt. In my room, I stared at the wedding binder pages of schedules, vendor contacts, my handwriting in the margins. I'd poured everything into this, but to them, I was invisible, a tool to make their lives easier. I thought of every family gathering where I'd jumped in, cooking, cleaning, organizing, because I wanted to help. Now it hit me, they didn't value it. They expected it. I sat on my bed, replaying their words. Stacy's laugh stung the most. She was my sister, the one I'd stayed up with after her first breakup, the one I'd cheered for at every milestone. And now she was tossing me aside like I didn't matter. George and Elizabeth weren't any better. They'd always leaned on me, Dad calling me to fix his computer, Mom asking me to run errands when she was too busy. I'd done it all, thinking it was what families do. But this, planning a wedding and babysitting a small army of kids without a single please. It was a line crossed. I opened my laptop, pulling up the catering contract. My finger hovered over the email tab. Part of me wanted to storm downstairs, demand an explanation, but I knew how that'd go. Dad's dismissive wave, Mom's fake surprise, Stacy's eye roll. No words wouldn't fix this. They'd made their plan without me, so I'd make mine without them. I wasn't just hurt. I was done being their doormat. My role in this family wasn't what I thought it was, and that realization burned. I needed to rethink everything starting with that wedding. I needed to talk to someone who'd get it, so I texted my best friend Carol asking her to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. The place was buzzing baristas, steaming milk couples chatting over lattes, but I barely noticed. I slid into a booth, my wedding binder still tucked under my arm, its pages a reminder of how much I'd given. Carol walked in, her usual smile fading when she saw my face. I spilled everything, how I'd spent months designing Stacy's wedding, from the gazebo setup to the buffet menu, only to overhear them plotting to make me a babysitter. They didn't even ask me. "Carol," I said, my voice tight. "They just assumed I'd do it, like my time means nothing." Carol leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "That's not family, Judith. That's exploitation. You're not their hired help." Her words hit hard like a splash of cold water. She didn't sugarcoat it, just listened as I vented about Dad's casual dismissal, Mom's agreement, and Stacy's laugh that cut deepest. "You don't owe them anything," Carol said, stirring her coffee. "What are you going to do about it?" That question lit a spark. I'd been fuming, but now I saw a way out. "I'm not going," I told her, the words surprising even me. "I'm done with their wedding." Carol raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Good. Make them feel it." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the catering company's contact. My finger hovered over the call button. This was it, no turning back. I dialed, my heart racing. "Hi, this is Judith Lane," I said to the manager. "I need to cancel the buffet order for the Lane wedding this Saturday. All of it." The manager sounded confused, asking for a reason, but I kept it short. "Personal circumstances," I said, hanging up before I could second-guess myself. Next, I called the decor vendor. The table settings, the fairy lights, the centerpieces, cancel everything, I told them. The woman on the line tried to argue, mentioning deposits, but I cut her off. "Send the invoice to George Lane," I said, my voice steady. I wasn't paying for their mess. Each call felt like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. I wasn't just canceling services, I was reclaiming my dignity. Carol watched me, a small smile creeping onto her face. "You're really doing this," she said. I nodded, feeling a rush of clarity. They'd made their plan without me, so I'd make mine without them. But I wasn't done. I opened my laptop right there in the coffee shop, searching for a place to escape on Saturday. Knoxville's boutique hotels popped up, and one caught my eye, a sleek spot downtown with a rooftop bar and views of the Tennessee River. Perfect. I booked a suite for the weekend, my credit card confirmation pinging before I could overthink it. I imagined myself there, sipping a drink while Stacy and my parents scrambled. The thought made me smirk, not out of spite, but because I was finally choosing myself. Carol reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You're stronger than they think," she said. I felt it too, like a fire igniting inside me. I wasn't the pushover they expected. Back home, I packed a small bag, clothes, toiletries, my favorite book. No wedding binder this time. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a text from Stacy or Mom, but it was silent. They had no idea what was coming. I'd spent years jumping when they called, fixing their problems, thinking it was my role. Now I saw it for what it was, a one-sided deal where I gave and they took. Wednesday morning, I double-checked the cancellations. The caterer emailed a confirmation. The decor vendor sent a snippy note about the last-minute change. I didn't care. I called the hotel to confirm my reservation, adding a spa appointment for Saturday. Why not? I deserved it. My inbox had a few messages from vendors asking about final details for the wedding, but I forwarded them all to George. Let him figure it out. I wasn't their safety net anymore. By Wednesday night, I was calmer than I'd been in weeks. The wedding was in 3 days, and I wouldn't be there. Stacy, George, and Elizabeth would face the fallout of their own making. I didn't know exactly how it'd play out, but I knew one thing: I was ready to let them deal with it. I turned off my phone, poured a glass of wine, and sat on my couch, feeling lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't planning someone else's day. I was planning mine. Saturday morning, the wedding day, I woke up to a sunrise over Knoxville. The boutique hotel's suite was everything I'd hoped for. Crisp white sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a view of the Tennessee River glinting gold. For the first time in months, I wasn't rushing to fix someone else's problem. No wedding binder, no vendor emails, no family demands. Just me, a plush robe, and a cup of coffee from the rooftop bar. I stood on the balcony breathing in the freedom. Stacy's wedding was happening across town at the park, but I was done being their fallback plan. Today, I was choosing myself. I sank into a lounge chair flipping through a magazine when my phone buzzed. Stacy's name lit up the screen. I let it ring, savoring the moment before picking up. "Judith. Where are you?" She shouted, her voice shrill with panic. "The caterer's gone, the tables are bare, and we've got kids running wild." I could hear chaos in the background, shrieks, clattering dishes, someone yelling about napkins. I leaned back, crossing my legs. "Sounds like a mess, sis," I said, my tone ice cold. "But you didn't ask me to help, remember. You just assumed I'd handle it," she stammered. "We need you here. This is my wedding." I almost laughed. "You needed a babysitter and a planner for free," I said. "Find someone else." I hung up, my heart pounding but steady. 10 minutes later, George called. "Judith. This is unacceptable." He barked, his voice all dad authority. "Get to the park now and fix this." I pictured him standing there, tie loosened, surrounded by confused guests. "Fix it yourself, Dad," I said, calm but sharp. "You and Mom decided I was your errand girl without asking. I'm not coming." He started to argue, but I cut him off. "You made this mess. Deal with it." I ended the call, my hands shaking, but my resolve solid. They'd crossed a line, treating me like I existed for their convenience. I wasn't budging. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence settle. The hotel was a haven, soft jazz playing in the lobby, staff gliding by with polite smiles. I booked a massage for the afternoon, something I hadn't done in years. My phone buzzed again, texts from Elizabeth pleading, "Judith. Please, we're desperate." I ignored them. Their desperation wasn't my problem. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to save the day. I felt lighter, like I'd shed years of their expectations. I opened my laptop, checking emails for a new client project, a corporate gala I'd pitched last week. Work felt good, like a reminder I had a life beyond their demands. Around noon, Carol texted asking if I was free for lunch. She was in town for a work assignment covering a local festival. I invited her to the hotel's restaurant, a sleek spot with exposed brick and craft cocktails. Over salads, we talked shop, her latest article, my gala plans. "Heard the wedding's a disaster," she said, casually spearing a tomato. I shrugged, keeping it light. "They'll figure it out." Carol didn't push, just nodded, and we moved on to brainstorming my next pitch. It was refreshing, no pity, no rehashing my family drama. Just two friends talking business like normal people. My phone kept buzzing, more calls from Stacy, a voicemail from George, even a text from Mom saying, "This isn't you, Judith." I deleted them all. Their words didn't sting anymore, they just sounded hollow. I thought about the park, picturing guests milling around, no food, no decorations, kids probably tearing through the gazebo. Stacy must have been fuming in her white dress, George barking orders, Elizabeth trying to smooth things over. I didn't feel guilty. They'd assumed I'd bend like always. But I wasn't their safety net anymore. I'd spent years saying yes to keep the peace, thinking it made us a family. Now I saw it for what it was, a one-way street. I headed to the spa, sinking into a massage chair as the therapist worked out knots I didn't know I had. The room smelled of lavender, and for an hour I forgot about the wedding entirely. My phone stayed off, tucked in my bag. I wasn't hiding, I was living. Later, I strolled through downtown Knoxville, popping into a bookstore to browse. I bought a novel, something light and fun, and sat by the river with an iced tea. The day felt like mine, not theirs. I wasn't just skipping the wedding. I was rewriting what family meant to me. By evening, I was back at the hotel sipping a cocktail at the rooftop bar. The city lights sparkled below, and I felt a quiet strength. Stacy and George's calls had stopped, probably because they were too busy scrambling. I didn't care how they were handling it. I'd given them my all for years, time, energy, love, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Today wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. For myself. I wasn't going back to being their doormat. I finished my drink, ready for whatever came next. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Most were from numbers I didn't recognize, guests at Stacy's wedding, no doubt caught in the chaos I'd left behind. I'd turned off my phone during my spa session, but now back in my suite, I scrolled through the texts, each one painting a picture of a disaster unfolding at the Knoxville Park. One message stood out from Pamela Russell, a guest I vaguely knew as a friend of Mom's. "Judith, this wedding is a mess," her text read. "No food, no decorations, kids everywhere." "I don't blame you for staying away." I smirked, imagining Pamela, a no-nonsense mom of two, watching the scene unravel. She'd always been blunt, and her words felt like a nod of approval. "They should have respected you," she added. I didn't reply, but her support settled something in me. The park must have been a nightmare. Bare tables, no buffet, just a gazebo with nothing to show for months of planning. Another text came from my cousin Matthew. "I messed up Judith," he wrote. "I went along with George's plan at first, but I told him off today. He's furious." I raised an eyebrow. Matthew had been at the house when Stacy, George, and Elizabeth cooked up their scheme to make me babysit 12 kids. He hadn't spoken up then, but now he was picking a side. "You did the right thing," he added. I typed back a quick, "Thanks," feeling a flicker of connection. Matthew's fallout with Dad was a crack in their united front, and it felt good to know someone in the family saw my point. The real story came through snippets in Pamela's follow-up texts. With no caterer, the guests were left with nothing but a water station and some stale chips from a nearby convenience store. The 12 kids, unsupervised, had turned the park into their playground. Pamela described one boy knocking over a folding chair, another spilling juice on a guest's dress, and a group playing tag through the ceremony area. Stacy, in her pristine white gown, was apparently screaming at a vendor on the phone, trying to salvage something. I could picture her face, red veil askew, as the dream wedding she'd bragged about crumbled. George and Elizabeth weren't faring any better. Pamela mentioned they'd scrambled to hire a last-minute caterer, some fast food joint that could deliver sandwiches for 150 people. It cost them a fortune, around $3,000, she guessed, based on overhearing George's heated call with the bank. The food arrived late, cold, and barely enough. Guests were grumbling, some slipping away before the toasts. Elizabeth tried to play hostess, offering weak apologies, but Pamela said her smile looked forced, like she knew the day was a bust. "Your parents are humiliated," Pamela texted. I leaned back, letting that sink in. They'd counted on me to make everything perfect, but without me, their facade fell apart. I didn't feel glee, just a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge, it was about consequences. Stacy had laughed off my efforts, assuming I'd handle everything. George had barked orders like I was his employee. Elizabeth had gone along, never questioning. Now they were paying for it, literally and figuratively. The guests' early exits were a blow to their pride, especially for Dad, who cared about appearances. I pictured him pacing, tie undone, muttering about how this never would have happened if I'd just shown up. But I hadn't, and that was the point. Matthew's second text gave more context. "George blamed me for not warning him you'd bail," he wrote. "I told him he should have asked you first." I could imagine the argument, Matthew, usually quiet, standing up to Dad's temper. It must have been heated, maybe in front of guests, adding to the embarrassment. I didn't reply this time. Matthew's choice to confront George was his own, but it showed the ripple effect of my stand. Their plan had backfired, and now they were turning on each other. Pamela sent one last message. "You're better off where you are. I nodded to myself, setting the phone down. The hotel suite was quiet, the river outside shimmering under the afternoon sun. I didn't need to be at the park to know the chaos was real. Stacy's perfect day was in tatters, and George and Elizabeth were stuck cleaning up a mess they'd made. I'd spent years smoothing over their problems, but not today. The wedding was their disaster to handle. 2 days later, I was sipping tea when the doorbell rang. I'd been back at my Knoxville home for a few hours, unpacking from the hotel, my mind still buzzing with the freedom of yesterday. I glanced at the door expecting a delivery, but my gut tightened when I saw Stacy through the peephole. Her face was drawn, no trace of her wedding day glow. I opened the door, cup still in hand, and leaned against the frame. "What do you want, sis?" I asked, my voice flat. Stacy stepped inside without waiting for an invite, her heels clicking on my hardwood floor. "We need to talk," she said, her tone a mix of exhaustion and defiance. She stood in my living room, arms crossed, still wearing earrings from the wedding. "Yesterday was a disaster, Judith. You didn't show up and everything fell apart." I set my tea down, meeting her eyes. "Sounds like you had a rough day," I said, letting the sarcasm linger. She flinched but pressed on. "I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean for it to go like that. We just thought you'd handle the kids because you're so good at everything." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Good at everything? You mean good at cleaning up your messes for free?" I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You, George and Elizabeth decided I'd be your babysitter and planner without asking me. That's not family, Stacy. That's disrespect." Her eyes widened like she hadn't expected me to push back. "We didn't mean it like that," she stammered. "We were stressed planning the wedding and we thought you'd want to help." I shook my head. "You didn't think about what I wanted. You assumed I'd fall in line like always." Stacy's face crumpled and she tried a different tack. "I'm your sister," she said, voice softer. "We've always been there for each other. Can't we just move past this?" I felt a pang. Memories of late-night talks, her leaning on me through heartbreaks, but it wasn't enough. "You were there for me when it suited you," I said. "But when I gave everything for your wedding, you laughed it off and piled on more. I'm done being your safety net." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "No, Stacy. You don't get to guilt me into fixing this. You made your choice. Now live with it." She stood there silent, her hands twisting together. "Mom and Dad are upset too," she said finally, almost a whisper. "They're saying you ruined everything." I didn't blink. "They ruined it when they treated me like their errand girl," I said. "If they're upset, that's their problem, not mine." Stacy's eyes welled up, but I didn't soften. I'd spent years swallowing my hurt to keep the peace. Not anymore. "You should go," I told her, nodding toward the door. She hesitated, then turned and left, her footsteps echoing as the door clicked shut. I sank onto my couch, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. I'd held my ground and it felt right. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was my Aunt Beatrice, her voice warm but firm when I answered. "Judith, I heard what happened," she said. "I'm proud of you." Beatrice had always been the blunt one in the family, never afraid to call out nonsense. "I was at the wedding," she continued. "It was a mess, and they deserved it. George and Elizabeth were out of line, and Stacy should have known better." I smiled, her words like a balm. "Thanks, Beatrice," I said. "I just couldn't do it anymore." "You did the right thing," she said. "They thought they could lean on you forever without giving back. You showed them they can't." We talked for a bit, her stories of the chaotic reception, guests leaving early, George's red-faced arguments confirming what I'd heard. But Beatrice didn't linger on the drama. "Focus on you now," she advised. "You've got a good head on your shoulders. Don't let them pull you back." I promised I wouldn't, and we hung up, her support settling deep in my chest. I sat back staring at the ceiling. Stacy's visit hadn't shaken me. Her apologies were too late, her excuses too weak. George and Elizabeth's anger didn't faze me either. I'd given them years of my time, my energy, my loyalty, and they'd thrown it away. Beatrice's call was a reminder that not everyone in the family saw me as a tool. I felt stronger, ready to close this chapter for good. A week after the wedding, I threw myself into building my own event planning company. The idea had been simmering for months, sparked by the corporate gala pitch I'd sent before the wedding. I named it Lane Events, a nod to my own strength. I rented a small office downtown with big windows overlooking Market Square. My first clients were a local couple planning an anniversary party, and their trust in me felt like a fresh start. I hired a small team, leaned on my years of experience, and poured my energy into every detail: floral arches, curated menus, lighting that set the mood. Within months, Lane Events was booked solid with bookings for corporate retreats and charity galas. The Knoxville News ran a feature on me, calling my work polished and heartfelt. Each success reminded me I was more than a family errand runner. Meanwhile, Stacy, George, and Elizabeth were reeling from the wedding's fallout. Beatrice, always the family truth-teller, filled me in during a coffee catch-up. The botched wedding had cost them more than just money. George's reputation as the perfect host took a hit. Friends and colleagues stopped inviting him to gatherings, whispering about the disaster. Elizabeth's social circle, usually buzzing with gossip, grew quiet around her. They'd shelled out $3,000 for last-minute catering, but the real damage was deeper. Beatrice said they'd borrowed money to cover it, straining their finances. They're still licking their wounds, she told me, stirring her latte. But they brought it on themselves. Matthew, my cousin, had also pulled away. After his argument with George at the wedding, he'd stopped showing up to family dinners. Beatrice mentioned he'd called her, venting about how George tried to pin the blame on everyone but himself. "He's done with them too," Beatrice said. Their isolation was a stark contrast to my new path. I wasn't gloating, but I felt a quiet vindication. Their plan to use me had backfired, leaving them to face the consequences: financial, social, and personal. The lesson hit me hard. Respecting myself had to come first. For years, I'd let Stacy, George, and Elizabeth take advantage of me, thinking it was my role as family. I'd planned their parties, fixed their problems, and swallowed my resentment to keep the peace. But family doesn't mean being a doormat. Their lack of respect cost them dearly, not just the money, but the trust of relatives like Beatrice and Matthew, and the respect of their community. I learned that saying no, setting boundaries, wasn't selfish, it was survival. Actions like theirs, assuming I'd carry their burdens without question, led to their own downfall: a ruined wedding, strained wallets, and fractured relationships. I didn't need their approval to thrive. Lane Events was proof of that. My days were filled with client meetings, venue tours, and late-night brainstorming sessions. I'd built something of my own, something they couldn't touch. Beatrice's support, Matthew's stand, and even Pamela's texts from the wedding day showed me I wasn't alone. There were people who saw my worth, who didn't expect me to bend over backward for nothing. That was enough. As I sat in my office reviewing contracts for a spring festival, I felt a clarity I hadn't known before. Cutting off Stacy, George, and Elizabeth wasn't about punishment, it was about freedom. I wasn't waiting for their apologies or hoping for change. I was done carrying their weight. My life was moving forward, and I was building it on my terms. Thank you for staying with my story. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell for more real-life drama.